Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and this is part 2 of my favorite books of 2024. This might need a part 3, maybe even a chance there might be part 4. We will see, but I do have a doctor's appointment later, so I'm on limited time right now, but I'm going to try to continue, see how much I can get done. But if not, there will be part 3, and like I said, possibly in part 4. And it might not come, I might not film it until tomorrow because I'm going to see how I feel when I get home. And then my parents are going to go out for New Year's Eve, and I'm going to watch the dogs and the dog, and I'm going to be so I won't be filming that tonight. So that might, anyway, and like I said, I might not be feeling that great when I get home this afternoon for my appointment, so if there's have to be part 3, it won't be filmed until tomorrow. Okay, so the next book is, I finally finished Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and I absolutely love this. This takes place in the Napoleonic Wars, and it's kind of an alternative version of England where the idea of magic is real. Like, there is magic in the world, that it did exist, but it doesn't exist anymore. People do not practice magic anymore, but people will study it. Then this real magician, Mr. Norrell, reveals himself and does a demonstration to prove that he is a real magician. And he starts, being like, I'm the only one who can do magic, no one else can. And he starts obtaining any book on magic so that no one else will study it. And he becomes a highly coveted magician. Everyone wants him, but he's kind of arrogant about it. And then later on, a younger magician, a Mr. Jonathan Strange, comes into the picture, and he is just as good, if not better, than Mr. Norrell. And Norrell is threatened by this guy, and they end up becoming partners. He takes Strange on as a student, but Strange's ideas are unconventional, and Norrell doesn't approve of them, and they eventually are at odds and become enemies and rivals. And both of them start doing their part to help the war effort. More so Strange than Norrell, and it's about both of their journeys. And there is a subplot of a fairy king that shows up and invades the lives of some of the people who live in London. This woman, Lady Pole, and then this butler, and puts them into his thrall, and uses them and holds them hostage. And it's just such a whimsical, magical, cozy, autumnal story, autumnal and a winter story. It is long. It does, like, a lot of people compare it to Jane Austen because of the time period and everything, but I feel like it's more Dickensian in the story, in the premise, and these quirky characters, or like Dickensian and Trollopian. I just made that up. I've never heard of, no one's ever used that word before, but when I say Trollopian, I mean like Anthony Trollope, with his characters as well, but definitely very Dickensian, and just, it was such a fun read, and I love the idea of a historical time period that you normally don't do a fantasy story set in that time period. Like, you have the Renaissance period, the medieval period, and modern day, and all that. Like, that's what I loved about The Diviners by Libba Ray. It takes place in the 1920s, but it introduces, like, the supernatural. And I like that this is a time period where you don't see a lot of supernatural stories with magic and, fantastical creatures and stuff like that. And it's such a fun concept to explore. The Thistledown Man is such an intriguing antagonist, and he is definitely more like the Celtic mythology fairies, where he's mischievous and kind of sinister, but he just doesn't understand human emotions, and he forms this strong bond with this butler, who is also a black man, so he's been made to be very obedient and submissive to the white rich nobles that he works for. And while the king tries to make him more than that. And it's just so it's such an interesting mythology, and I just loved it, and I do want to read it again, but it is a very long, dense read, and I will still take forever to read it, even if I've already read it once before. So then we have another fantasy, which is Hearthstone, the first book in a trilogy, and I just finished the second book, and I'm gonna read the third and final book in January. This is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, so again, taking a time period but adding a fantasy element to it, and it does a similar thing to, I cannot great Joe Walton's book, the one where the characters are dragons, Tooth and Claw, which was a very cute, very fun, cozy retelling, and this one is a more fantastical one. There is a bit of a coziness to it, but also it's like there's a big epic war going on, and the characters are dragon riders, and they have magical creatures, and it's like, it was really, and they take the idea of classism and do a new spin on the idea of classism, and how, like, our main character is, Eliza is, considered, she is from a different class of the dragon ride compared to the dragon riders, and she's seen as beneath them. She's not a warrior like Darrett is, who is the Darcy character. And it doesn't focus as much on the character who's kind of Charisse is her name, I think. She is kind of the Caroline Bigling character. And it's actually not as prominent in the story, that whole love triangle, or her seeing Eliza as a rival is not as prominent, and there's bigger conflicts that keep them kind of at odds with each other, I think. And the dragons, I love a story with dragons, and I think the dragons are really cool. They each have their own personalities. And I feel like Darrett's aunt is even worse, even more snobbish in this book than the original character that she's based on. It was a really fun story, and I enjoyed the second one as well. And the second one adds more world building, explores more, and of course, this is a Pride and Prejudice retelling, so I'm sure people can guess how it ends. So what I like is how it kind of continues the couple's story, but you kind of see them. They're actually together. There's not like love drum. There isn't a love triangle or things that are trying to keep them apart or anything involved in their like. There are bigger things going on. And I love all the different creatures we meet, and it was really a fun take on the whole Pride and Prejudice story. And then we have, again, another one that I finally have been to get to. This is my reread of Clash of Kings, the sequel to A Game of Thrones, and this again was so good. I love this story, this Song of Ice and Fire story, and all the world building, and like how it has a very medieval type feel to it. A War of the Roses, because that's what inspired George R. R. Martin. And we really get a lot of world building. We really get to know the world, and I see all these different kingdoms in this Westeros, and it's really hard for me to talk about this book and how much I love it, because it has been a while, and it's hard for me to talk about it, even though I love it and I do consider it a favorite, because it's not a very simple plot, and I love all the political machinations, and I don't have any, it's just, I enjoy the series. And again, I don't know what else to say. And then we have Shadow of Night, the sequel to A Discovery of Witches. And this one, they're in the medieval era, because in the Discovery of Witches, we discovered that our, Diana can time jump. So we get to time jump into the medieval world, into Shakespeare's time. And it was kind of cool that we actually got to meet some characters in that time period that aren't as widely talked about. Like Christopher Marlowe. And I'm trying to think of who else, but I don't know if there's anyone else any other famous name, but we do get to meet Queen Elizabeth, I think. But like, we really get to explore the world this time period a lot, and also, again, we're exploring this relationship, and we meet some more of Matthew's family members. Like, I really liked his dad. He's a very interesting guy, he cares about his family, but he's not, he's also cautious at the same time, but he's very welcoming and loving towards Diana. And it was really fun to explore this time period and explore parts of it that you don't get to explore, like in other historical fiction that takes place in this time period. And I feel like I need to read more books in that time period. Like, I still have not read Hamnet, but I do want to at some point. But yeah, and I like, and of course we get to explore more of Diana and Matthew's relationship. And I kind of enjoy stories where we see the couple is still together in the next book, and they're not constantly being torn apart by other people, like, or at least not in a, like, be like, am I really meant to be with this person? Or, like, love triangles. I don't mind love triangles. I don't have a problem with it as much as other people do, but it is kind of nice to see something where there's not a love triangle involved. And just explore the couple between the two of them. I mean, although I can't entirely say there wasn't a little bit of suggestion of a love triangle, like there was a character that was in love with Matthew. But nothing was going to come of it in the end. I felt safe. Like, I felt like we didn't have to worry about him being tempted into stray. In fact, I felt bad I almost pitied the other person. That loved Matthew. And we also learn more about the witchcraft from the perspective of witches from the 1700s. And we get to figure out more about Diana and her powers and understand them better, which I thought was really cool. So, in Discovering Witches, we kind of get an idea more about vampires. Well, this one we explore more about witches, which is interesting because that one is called In Discovery Witches. But we focus more on witches in this book than that one. And Diana's magic and everything. And we have some very intriguing antagonists. Even Queen Elizabeth is a bit of an antagonist because she's kind of, mean in this book. And, but yeah, so this was a really great sequel. And I'm curious why the people that don't like this series don't like it. I mean, part of me doesn't want to know, but part of me kind of does at the same time. Because I don't see I mean, maybe because it's melodramatic, I don't know, but I'm having a good time with this, and I really am enjoying this world, and I can't wait to read the third one. I don't know if I'll read Time's Convert, which is not a continuation of Diana and Matthew's story. It's more about Matthew's son, who is a secondary character in this. But anyway, I really enjoyed this. And then another trilogy, first book in a trilogy that I read was The Magicians by Lev Grossman. And this is one I started years ago and had, set aside, decided I'm not going to continue with it, but then Murphy Napier talked about on her channel how much she loved it. And that kind of inspired me to give this another chance because I love the show. I enjoyed the show. And yeah, I still kind of prefer the show over the book, but I had a good time. First of all, with this, and just this school was so it was so cool. It was feeling like a more, like you actually got to see how hard and challenging magic is to learn magic, and we focused a lot more on the kids learning it. Like in Harry Potter, there was this big things going on, so we weren't, the first book there was, we had scenes where they were in classes and stuff like that, and you do definitely, in the actual books, unlike the movies, which I don't know about the show, what the show's going to do, but, I mean, I'm assuming the show will show more classroom time, but we actually got to see the characters crafting their magic, and how it wasn't as easy to, and it requires skill and technique. And we focus a lot more, and of course our main character, Quentin is not likable. He's kind of an ass and kind of a selfish jerk at times. So I think it was nice to see an unlikable main character. I personally like, I mean, not always. There are times when characters are just so unlikable for me. Like the Scalamont series, I read the first book in the trilogy and I just I couldn't stand being in the head of that main character. And the same thing with Ignatius P. Riley from A Confederacy of Dunces. I couldn't stand him and being his head the whole time. I mean, maybe as a TV show I could, but as a book, not so much. Well, in this one, I actually was okay with this unlikable, selfish character that was Quentin, and seeing him really struggle learning magic. And I really like that teacher. I cannot remember his name. Like in the second part of the book, where they go to the northern version of the school and learn with that Russian teacher. I really liked him. He was fun and snarky and sarcastic, and he was really hard on the kids, but he doesn't coddle them or anything. And it was just a really kind of, and I just like how, like, it was a grittier take, and it felt more like a real, like, school situation. Like, the characters were getting into situations that were realistic relationship drama, and I thought this world was just so cool. And like I said, I really love the TV show, and I love the book too, but I do lean more towards the show. So if you don't like the book, the trilogy itself, then at least give the show a shot. You might actually like the show a little bit better than the books. But anyway, so that. Okay, so I have a little bit more time, so I'm going to continue. Next we have. This was the book from Victober that I read, and that's The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I won't say this is exactly a mystery per se, but there is a bit of a mystery to it. Like, there are characters in this there's things about our antagonists that we don't know. You can't really trust him. So we have our main character, one of our main characters, Walter Hartwright. I think, I don't remember his last name. He comes to be a drawing master for these two young women. One of them, the one he ends up falling in love with, is engaged to this guy, this very rich man, Sir. He is Sir. I used to know his name. She doesn't know anything about him. She only doing it because it was her father's request to marry this guy. Ends up turning out to be kind of a greedy asshole who gets himself into debt and is only marrying her for her family's money, and wants to take away her money from her sister that she wanted to give to her sister, who she's very close with. And the catalyst of this whole situation is this mysterious woman in white who looks very similar to the other woman, and she knows about this guy that the other woman is marrying. I'm sorry, I don't remember the character names that easily. And she tells them she knows this guy's secret. And so it's all in, it's a very complicated, messy, scary situation for the two sisters. And was so page turning and I felt like Percival Glyde, that was his name. Percival Glyde is the guy that she's supposed to be marrying. And although I gotta say, like, he was a good antagonist. He was mean, he was scary and unpredictable. But there was also the antagonist of Count Fosco, who was just, like, he was very even scarier, I think, because you didn't know, he could be charming, and he liked the sister and and admires her, respects her, and he very much is a puppet master, and you can't really trust him. And it's okay. This will be continued. I will continue this later. All right. I hope. Sorry. All right. Bye.